Charlie Kirk.
Charlie
Always enjoy a
Kirk.
Charlie Kirk video.
They always bring something especially stupid or special. Here he is, yeah, and sweaty and big America hat, but not this time. Charlie Kirk is here speaking with Eric Metaxas, and
Theocrat, Eric Metaxas.
And here he is making a claim about his position on who was a better president in between George W. Bush and Bill Clinton. You might be shocked to hear what he has to say, and also it's pretty telling about at least one of these guys.
This is a funny conversation.
As I said earlier, I'm hopeful because I think that even though this is painful, I think a lot of people are waking up and they're going, you know what? I now have enough evidence to think these things. I didn't want to think these things. I didn't want to think that there was a one-party system and that George W. Bush wasn't that different from Bill Clinton. I just didn't want to believe that.
No, they're basically identical except for a couple tax policy issues.
Except W didn't marry Hillary.
Yeah, I mean, it's super controversial when I say this, but Bill Clinton was actually probably a better president than George W. Bush.
Well, it's not that controversial with
outside Supreme Court picks. Then he was better
with smart people like me.
No, I mean, like he balanced the budget, right?
Well, look, there's this little thing called the internet and the end of the Soviet Union, which kind of helped him. The piece
you know me, I'm not giving credit to Clinton.
Internet,
right?
But George W. Bush gave us Medicare Part D. He massively expanded the deficit. He gave us the TSA, Department of Homeland Security. 9/11 happened on his watch because of relaxed immigration policies.
And didn't he get us into a war in Iraq? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, he did. And not only a war, but an unnecessary war. And this is what really bothers me. This is a super thought crime, and I'll leave you with this, is that people are like, oh, yeah, it's bad that Russia's invading Ukraine. You're right. Big countries shouldn't invade sovereign countries. Wait. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I know. That's actually, here we go. Some decent takes by Charlie Kirk, at least on sovereignty there. Although,
are these guys just becoming centrist Democrats? Some of them,
pretty much. But Metaxas has to be a complete sexist and like throw in the at least he didn't marry Hillary, right? Like Laura, way cooler, way hotter. Like, Barbara's his mom. Yeah. Right. So I like that. That's also just what this says to me is this is such a condemnation of what the Democratic Party became under Clinton. Like, so I didn't get to an IMer, but an IMer wrote in and said, honestly, is Biden the best president we've had since Reagan? That was the question. And like, that's a difficult question, I think, to answer because Biden is not even halfway through his first term yet, if he even has a second term. Yeah. But the bar is incredibly low. It's definitely not Bill Clinton. I mean,
that's the thing is like, it's not Bill Clinton. I think split hairs between Obama and Biden about certain things. We'll see how Biden finishes his term. Like Obama, you could emphasize things like the Iran deal, for instance, and like those sorts of initiatives.
And Cuba opening up.
And it previously used to be like you would even mention Obamacare, but I don't even feel like mentioning that anymore.
Right.
But it's not a high bar, I guess, is the answer.
Right.
This might be the contrarian streak in me, but just hearing him say that, it automatically makes me think that Bill Clinton is a worse president than George W. Bush. I can't say, I have to give it a lot of thought. Although, of course, Clinton, helped bomb Yugoslavia. So I guess that's not really, his interpretation of like the Clinton presidency is not exactly fully one-to-one. But, I think what has to be emphasized that as a country, though, despite going back and forth between Republican and Democrat, we're just on a downward slope. Like we just continue to like lose rights, continue to have our infrastructure crumble, continue to have like, just the, I don't want to say the complete lack of, rather complete intransigence to our suffering by the government that quibbles back and forth between Republican and Democrat. And, sometimes it's frustrating, not in this instance, because it is kind of funny to think about, but it is frustrating when that just becomes the battleground for like where we are as a country. Like, is this president better than like the last one in a few ways, as opposed to like what is the overall trajectory of this country, not the GDP or like the stock market based.
And what's interesting to me too is this project by right wingers, and we touched on it a little bit in terms of how they're a bit listless or they can't really find their footing on how to message Ukraine. There's a lot of revisionist history from conservative pundits who have plausible deniability because they weren't around during Iraq and Afghanistan about where they stand on this. And it reminds me a lot of what we're seeing with conservatives with MLK. The idea, like the complete depoliticizing of what that meant and where lines were drawn and who sided where. I mean, the entire, with very few exceptions, conservative movement was behind the invasion of Iraq and of Afghanistan. And now you have, Trump going up there pretending he was against it when he was basically just like, both for and against it in his various media appearances, and dunking on Jeb Bush during the Republican primary. Tucker Carlson's trying to like completely erase his history of that and brand himself as this isolationist. Charlie Kirk now saying this about Iraq being a disaster. That this is not where Charlie Kirk would be if that was today. And so I just think that's important to point out, because they are really blurring things, and it's purposeful in my opinion.
Right, but you also have to recall why they feel this way now is because now over a decade plus later, we can it's undeniable that the invasion of Iraq, for example, was a major failure, and this is where they care for America. Like they don't have any qualms about the lives lost in Iraq or Afghanistan or anywhere else the U.S. has intervened or invaded or occupied. What they care about is how it affects the United States. And it is an indisputable fact that this country is worse on every level, thanks to, again, using the example, the invasion of Iraq. I mean, they just, so instead of, though, of course, reversing and saying, man, we really screwed that up, they just come out and pretend like, oh, it's never going to be good for America. So, that's why we're against it. We knew it was going to be bad for America.
Yeah. It's dangerous because, we played this earlier in the show of Senator Kennedy, who was hawking, and saying how much more the United States military has to get involved. In fact, we're already at war with Russia, is what he was saying. So basically, it's a wash if we get more involved. No fly zone, boots on the ground, whatever. I mean, that part I'm extrapolating, but it's important to recognize where the real lunatics and hawks lie. And there's a lot of Republican hiding of the ball, conservative hiding of the ball of where the hawk's nest, the majority of them is. I guess it's like I spoke like Yoda, but you know what I mean. And it's with the Republicans. And if we are ever in the situation again, it will be the Republicans and the conservatives, mostly banging the drum for war and more bloodshed.